When I was younger in the town that I grew up in on the coast, kelp was just a major component of the ecosystem and the culture around there that I never thought it was something that could just not be there someday. Kelp is like the forest of the ocean. What would we risk if we lost trees? I don't think a lot of people know it's there because a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to get underwater and dive, especially in cold water. When you're under there, it really does feel like you're swimming through a forest. They grow to 100 feet tall and they cover the whole sea surface. Kelp has been declining rapidly, especially around my hometown. That was one of the regions where kelp collapsed and it has not recovered well. It hasn't bounced back, and the question is why. That hit home to me because I would like to do something about it. Scientists do not have all the answers. In fact, that's the point of our career, is we ask questions and we answer them. Our whole career is centered around the fact that we don't have all the answers. Kelp forest restoration is relatively new, largely because the realization that kelp forests are at such risk, the sort of stress that kelp is under, is also relatively new.
We'll do that roll down and then you can start working on that. And
Okay.
we'll start putting things together.
I had a ton of learning to do about the area, and that's where Rob and Amanda have really been leading, is they've seen it over decades.
You know, we know every inch of the shoreline, surface and underwater. Local knowledge can never be replaced, and it really helps when you can work with a researcher like Lauren to really help get the best out of that work.
These areas have been reaching temperatures routinely in the summer that get beyond the kelp's thermal limit. There's this massive ecosystem change, and we know we have to do something about it because these are critical habitats for the species that live around here. We've seen kelp lost from tens of kilometers in this area entirely in the last 10 to 20 years. To be on the surface before exactly at 6-0, because if we're over by 1 minute, it tips us into a different crunching room and then all our math will be different. So okay. Just be very aware to not break 60 minutes.
It's sort of easy to forget how much kelp is gone from this area. The whole Northern Strait was once abundant with kelp. It was like a nuisance. It was a hazard to navigation, and it's largely disappeared. You know, if you looked up and all the trees were gone off the hillsides, you would notice.
Kelp is a very cold weather species. So when we're facing a threat like ongoing increases in temperature, there isn't necessarily a way you can bring that kelp back unless you start looking at the kelp's genetic variation and tolerances. It's what we've been doing is bringing in kelp from the edges of this warm area, trying to find populations that are still hanging on, and we bring them all together to this very hot site and we grow them right next to each other. It sometimes feels like the pace of the solution is not outpacing the pace of the threat. To answer a question well, especially with living things, you often have to study the same question over multiple seasons. Because we're up against climate change, we're up against the burning of fossil fuels, and these are global scale aspects of human society right now that aren't going to change overnight. We have this burning desire to explore and to keep questioning. Curiosity is one of the most important aspects of being a scientist, because that is the thing that will keep you coming back day after day. To focus on a question long enough to answer it well. When the days get long and when you get tired of entering the same old data over and over, and part of the development of a scientist is to figure out where the priority questions are. Experiments don't always work out. You sometimes put in a ton of effort and sleepless nights and you get nothing. It does make you take big failures more in stride, because that's just a part of science. Sometimes your experiments don't work. Sometimes there's a storm and the ocean washes away the things you've put out.
The stressors on this kelp are happening so rapidly that to get ahead of it is so hard to do.
We feel like we want to try to help, but if the water's too warm, we might be beyond that point.
Answer as honestly as possible. Do you feel like we will be able to achieve kelp restoration at scale?
I worry that the answer to this is not very optimistic.
Our gut kind of says no, it's not actually going to happen.
We can change the way we interact with nature. If none of us try to put that effort in, nothing's going to happen. I think that's what gives us hope.